Welcome to Get on the Ark. I'm Darren Conrad, and I'm here with my guest, Bridgette Cameron Ridenour. Welcome, Bridgette.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having me. Good morning or good afternoon. I don't know sometimes what time it is. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, so I know that you're the sister of Kirk Cameron. So you grew up in Hollywood. Your family, your two sisters, your brother, and your family. What a beautiful family you guys have.
Oh, thank you.
And going through, I saw you wrote the book Overlooked. What an amazing story. And it was such a pleasure to reading that book. It gave me a glimpse of the journey of your family, in that world of Hollywood. And wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Some people listening today might not know that I have two sisters, and my youngest sister, Candace Cameron Bure, played DJ Tanner on Full House. So some people don't know that Kirk Cameron and Candace Cameron Bure are related,
Right.
And they're my siblings. And then we have another sibling, Melissa, as well. But yeah, it's the only way that I can describe, what it was like with two famous Hollywood siblings. It was a wild ride. The good, the bad, the ugly. But all I can say is God absolutely had his hand over our family as we kind of went through this dark Hollywood era. And how God was going to use Kirk and Candace, and now myself, and Melissa, and just glorifying him and spreading his message. It's just amazing because we didn't grow up in a Christian home where many people think, oh, they grew up that way. It's always been like that. No, we haven't. So it's just amazing how God knew how he was going to use us. And it's only God.
Yeah, and that was a surprise to me because I felt like you guys were just born a Christian family, and that's the path. And then hearing the story, so tell us a little bit about walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, so Kirk was about 16 years old. He was at the height of his career on Growing Pains, and he was dating a young woman at the time who invited him to church. He had never been to church before. Again, we did not grow up in a Christian home. I like to kind of describe our family as the CEO of Christianity, and what I mean by that is Christmas and Easter only. So that was our kind of Christian life, if you say. But he was dating a young woman who invited him to go to church on a Sunday morning. He said yes. I think just to kind of, please her and impress her. And he heard the gospel for the very first time. He heard the pastor go through the 10 Commandments and ask the congregation to apply it to their life. And Kirk sat there and he heard the good news. But when he applied those principles, the 10 Commandments, to his own life, and the pastor said, if you were to die today, would you be going to heaven or hell? And Kirk said, to himself, I'd probably be going to hell. I don't know who Jesus is. I don't have a relationship with him. And so he was driving home that day, and he said that he pulled over off the freeway and sat in a parking lot and for the first time had a conversation with God, and prayed for the very first time and asked Jesus into his heart, not really knowing even what that meant. But if what he was saying was true, he said, I would not be going to heaven if I were to die right now. And I don't want to miss that. And so he just prayed the most raw and real prayer, asked Jesus into his heart. And then, it wasn't like Kirk just became this, this huge, different person or, came home. It was like he started planting little seeds. We could see that he was changing. We could see his personality, his just kind of what he thought was right with the character on the show, and those kind of things. We can kind of see little changes in him, and that kind of got our family wondering, like, kind of what's going on. During this time, our parents were separated. My mom had moved out, and so they were going through their own difficulties. My dad did not grow up in a Christian home. He grew up as an atheist with his parents. And my mom knew Christ as a little girl, and again, just going to church for Christmas and Easter. But again, it was just God knew how he was going to use our family. And through Kirk, myself and my two other sisters dedicated our lives to Christ. My mom rededicated her life. And eventually my dad, being a school teacher for 30 some years, he had a lot of questions first. So it was a long time after that, but he did accept the Lord, and Kirk was able to baptize him on a men's getaway weekend with the church. And so, again, that's kind of our story, and it's amazing.
Wow. So, and your dad was kind of private about it. You didn't even know he got baptized until he got back, right?
Yeah, I was kind of like, when did Dad accept the Lord? like he's changed, right. He's definitely changing, and so yeah, it was a very private thing. Yeah.
Wow. And so when you personally, watching your brother evolve or change or follow Jesus, was there a moment, like, were you first, then Candace, then Melissa, or was there kind of was there a moment that you decided, wait, I want this?
Yeah, I think it goes back to just watching Kirk. Kirk and I are 10 and a half months apart. So we grew up very close. And, just from, besides being Mike Seaver on Growing Pains, just who he was as a person outside of that, I just really respected everything and anything that he talked about or that he was learning about. And so when he started growing his faith, I would start to ask questions and say, Kirk, what's going on? Like, you don't pick on me as much as you used to, or, Mike Seaver's character isn't the same. Like, what's going on with you? And so he would, kind of share with me, and I started to ask questions. And then it was just him asking me if I wanted to go to church with him, to the youth groups and things like that. And I said, yes, absolutely. And I just remember when I was 16 years old, I heard the gospel for the first time. I heard the message, and it was a worship concert, and the pastor had given the invitation to accept Christ. And I just sat there just ugly crying, and my brother's sitting next to me. And Kirk said, do you want to go up and give your life to Christ? And I said, Kirk, I don't even know how to do that. Like, but I feel different. I feel like this is what I want to do. And he said, I know. He said, I was there. He said, if you want to go up, I'll go up with you. And I said, yeah. And so just through my tears, I went up to the front and prayed with me. And, I said the sinner's prayer and accepted Christ into my life at 16 years old. And, that's kind of how it started for me. I'm not really sure how it was with Melissa and Candace, but
right.
it definitely just spread into, cousins and aunts and uncles and things like that. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay, in your journey, you wore braces for 10 years. Is that right?
I would say over 10 years, because I had 2 rounds of braces. But the first time, yes, it was about 10 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you got them off for your senior pictures, and you said, I'm not getting them back on, right?
Right.
You're like, is it 10 years they're not working, right?
Yeah, I mean, I got them on when I was in 2nd grade, and I didn't get them off until I was a senior in high school. And I don't remember any pictures without them. And so I said, Mom, at least for my senior pictures, can we take them off? And so we went and we talked to the orthodontist, and she said, I'll take the top ones off, but shortly after that, and you get your pictures, we're going to put them right back on again, because we still had some work to do. But then it was finally at a point where it was like, look, if you can't fix my teeth at this point, like, let's just take them off and, figure it out. And so I did. And then later in life, as an adult, I had to get them back on because I had to get, have jaw surgery, corrective jaw surgery, because I had an underbite. And the only way to correct that was to have surgery. And I will just say, if anyone is listening, this is so like off, topic of what I usually talk about. But anyone is considering having corrective jaw surgery for an underbite or an overbite, do it. Do it, do it, do it. I would have that surgery 100 times over because of just how I feel about my smile and my teeth and all that. So anyway, that was just kind of a little sidebar.
Wow. No, that's great. Well, and I don't want to give the whole book away, but definitely it's worth the read, and it's such a great story. But walk us through a little bit about your pregnancy and that miracle story, which I love that story. I mean, that's a beautiful story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. My book Overlooked is just filled with so many stories. I mean, if you enjoy just reading just, a good book, and I never thought that I would write a book, for one. But when I agreed to it, I said I want it to be captivating from the beginning, because that's how I love my books that I read all the way through. So it definitely takes you on a journey of my life growing up in Hollywood, and just, kind of all of that, and then into getting married and having kids. It's a quick read. Darren, I think that you said that was the fastest book that you've ever read. And, that's just how it is. I think it just captivates you in the beginning, and it's like, you don't want to put it down because you want to know what happens. Like, it's a cliffhanger. There's a couple cliffhangers in there. And you're like, okay, I need to keep going. And so most people can get through it in a couple of hours if they had that kind of time. But yeah, I share a lot of stories. And as you mentioned, I don't want to give it all away, but my husband and I, we were pregnant with our third child. I have two older boys, and then we were pregnant with our third. And I was about 9 weeks pregnant, and I ended up having a miscarriage. And it was kind of just a crazy whirlwind getting to the hospital and miscarrying at home. God clearly said to me, "You are miscarrying. This is your baby. You need to say goodbye." And so when I got to the hospital, I told them that I didn't. I wanted an ultrasound in the room rather than taking me to the OR right away. And they said that they would do an ultrasound in the OR, and I refused. I said no. And lo and behold, by doing the ultrasound in the room, the ultrasound revealed that I was still pregnant. And so I was just kind of confused and thinking, what is going on? Because I literally just said goodbye to my baby at home. And now I'm pregnant. And so I don't know how much you want me to share.
Oh, I keep going. Well, I love it because, yes.
Okay. Well, the surprise of that whole story is I was actually carrying twins, identical twin girls. And I did miscarry the one at home. But I did go on to have a beautiful pregnancy afterwards, no complications at all. And I actually, our daughter Sophia, who passed away in the miscarriage, gosh, I cannot believe it's actually going to be 20 years tomorrow.
Wow.
Is the anniversary of her passing. So wow. But then, so I did go on to have a beautiful pregnancy, and our daughter Reese was born in 2000. So my miscarriage was in 2005, and then Reese was born in 06. So, yeah, but I'm gonna leave the little cliffhanger. I'm not gonna share the cliffhanger about the miscarriage. Your listeners are gonna have to get the book to find out what happened at the end of that story. So
wow, well, what a great story. It was awesome. Like it kind of felt like the way you told the book, the way you described it in the book, you were like in the room, experiencing this whole. It was great. It was written very well.
thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
I'm not a big book reader either, Bridgette. So I got it. You sent me the book. I got it in the mail, and I'm like, man, I read it like before, the end of the day. So it was awesome.
I know. I think when I tell people I'm going to send you my book, they might go, "Oh, another book I have to read before I have her on my show." But I'm like, no, really. It's just it'll just be super quick. And so, again, that's just how I wanted to write it, and how the readers would read it, as if they were sitting with me, just hearing these stories, as if I was sitting next to them, sharing the stories. That's how I wanted it to read. And so, I'm happy that you enjoyed it.
Yeah. So tell us a little about your life in terms of, you received Jesus when you were 16, and then, I know it's for me, it's been kind of a transition. It's like a slow maneuver. So what's your life with Jesus now, and how is he moving in your life?
Yeah, I can't do life without him, for one. And just, my book Overlooked is really about just watching my sister and my brother grow up and do all the things that I wanted to do as a child. I wanted to be the little performer. I wanted to be the star. I wanted to be on TV, not them. And so the day that we were able to audition for the Hollywood agent, Iris Burton, I was told no that day, that it wouldn't be me. And my mom finally agreed to take us to Iris because of me, not because of my siblings. So my whole childhood, watching them do all the things that I wanted to do, I never really had that feeling of being overlooked at the time as a child, because my mom and dad always kept us together as a family. I was always on the set. I was always traveling with my siblings if I could. But it wasn't until I got older that I still had this feeling of, did you forget about me? And, God creates us. And so, God, you created me with all these gifts and talents, being a dancer and an actress and a singer and all these things, but yet I'm not doing anything. I'm watching Kirk and Candace's careers grow, but yet those doors for me are not opening. So, I did go through that time of wondering if God had forgotten about me. And it was a pivotal moment in my life in 2015 with my husband and our 3 kids, that we were in a very, very severe car accident. And that day changed my life. We were hit by a semi truck going full speed, and only by the grace of God were we saved that day. There was a fatality. And again, another story that's in Overlooked. But that day, God gave me my life verse, which is Jeremiah 29:11. And it was that moment at the accident where God gave me that verse. And he said to me, Bridgette, all those years that you felt that I have forgotten about you, that you've been overlooked, I know your desires. I know everything that you are wanting. I created you, but you have to trust me that in my timing, I will open the doors that I see fit for you. And, Jeremiah 29:11 is, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. not to harm you, but to prosper you, to give you hope and a future. And that day in the accident, in that moment, that was the verse that he gave me. And he, whispered to me. And that was a turning point for me in my faith, to where I knew that I needed to surrender all those feelings that are not from the Lord and trust him. And just know that all the doors that God had closed, maybe when I was a child, was protecting me. I mean, my sister and my brother were out in this Hollywood, industry, and he was protecting them, but he was also protecting me by closing all those doors for me as a child. But now, in the last several years, I've written a book. I travel around the United States and share my testimony at women's conferences and events. So he hasn't ever overlooked me or forgotten about me. It was just in his perfect timing that he was going to show me, the things that I have always desired to do. So.
Right. Wow. That moment, when you were on your way to Nashville, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was it in Oklahoma, this accident?
It was in Texas. It was
in Texas.
It was near Groom, Texas.
Okay. And it
Yeah.
wasn't like, I thought like your husband wouldn't get off the highway.
Yeah.
And then like last second he got off the highway, pulled off.
Yeah, we got caught in a dirt storm, and it was really bad. We live in the Palm Springs area, and we get dirt storms here all the time. But this storm was something different. I mean, it was literally a clear day, not a cloud in the sky. But then all of a sudden, we got caught in this dirt storm, and it blacked out our car. We literally couldn't see outside the front windshield of the car, and so my husband started to slow down, and he stopped, and we came up upon the back end of a semi truck with his hazards on, and it was stopped. And so he pulled up behind it, and the road that we were on is the 10, which is just 2 lanes going each direction. And so we were sitting behind this semi truck, only could see the back end of his car and nothing else. And so my husband turned to me. My husband was driving. My son Everett was in the front passenger. Our oldest son was in the back with me, and then our daughter Reese was in the back seat. And my husband John just kind of turned and looked at me and said, "I don't feel safe sitting behind this truck." And I didn't think anything of it. And I thought, okay. And he said, "I need to move our car." And so the way that I explain it is, I felt like the car just kind of lifted off the ground and was set back down. Mm-hmm. I don't really remember my husband like turning and moving the car. So when our car was sat down, now we were next to the semi on the shoulder. And that's when the semi truck came and hit, going full speed behind us. And that was the driver that passed away. The cab of his truck exploded, and he died on impact. And that was the truck that we were just behind, just seconds before this second semi truck hit it. And then another truck came from behind us while we were on the shoulder, did come from behind and hit our car and pushed us into a ravine. And after the chaos and everything that was going on, we found out that there were 7 semi trucks that hit each other, and our SUV, and the one fatality of the driver of that truck. And my husband and I and our children literally escaped without a scratch.
And you heard the Lord just say to tell your children, run, right?
Yeah, we couldn't get out the driver's side because we were trapped. Our car, the semi trucks, everything was on fire. And so the only way that we could get out was on the passenger side, and there was just a ditch with grass. And again, because of all the smoke and everything and the dirt that was going on, I couldn't see anything, but I could hear voices in the distance saying, over here, over here. And my kids got out of the car and I literally just told them to run. And I said, run to the voices. I had no idea where these voices were coming from or who was calling. I just said, run to the voices. And I just watched my children like go into this dark abyss or whatever. Like, I don't even know. And then my husband and I got out and we ran over to that same direction. And there was a couple on this dirt road that had watched the accident happen. And they got us in their car and drove us just a little bit further from the accident. And then I was able to call 911 and kind of explain where we were. I mean, we were out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I couldn't tell them, you know, an exit off the freeway. There weren't any exits around us, but they found us. And, but yeah, there were 7 semi trucks in our car that day.
Wow. But you still ended up going to Nashville, right?
We did. I wanted to go home. I begged my husband, let's just go home. And he said, no. He's like, this accident is not going to define us, and Satan is not going to win today. And he said, we're going to go. And I just wanted to be in the comfort, the safe space of my home with a blanket on the couch and some ice cream. I don't know, like, you know, the last thing I wanted to do was to get on a plane because now our car was totaled. But gosh, in the next days leading up to finally getting to Nashville, the reason why we were going to Nashville was Kirk and I did a movie together called Saving Christmas, and it was up for a few awards, and Kirk was going to Nashville to go to the show, the Caleb Awards, and he asked if I wanted to go, and I said, yeah. He goes, bring John and the kids. And so we road tripped it because that's what we did as a family when I was little. And it was so much fun. And it was some of the greatest childhood memories that I have. So I said, John, why don't we road trip? And he said, yeah. He said, that'd be great. But yeah, after the accident, I can't tell you how many times God showed up. I mean, from the tow truck driver that took us to the motel to the town that we went to after Groom that knew who we were because the accident had been on the news and we had to go to the hospital and get checked out. The nurses and the doctors saw the accident on TV, and when I told them that was us, we're the family, it was just amazing how God showed up in every step of the way. We eventually made it to Nashville. And yeah, it was great. It was what we needed. It was what we needed, because if we had just turned around and, you know, flew home or rented a car and drove home, you know, I don't know what the outcome would have been, you know, emotionally, that way.
Wow. Well, so God has always he's given you the spirit, like a positive, inspirational spirit your whole life. You've always looked for the good in everything, right?
I have, yeah. I mean, even when I was a little girl, I had trouble in school. You know, I had some learning disabilities. And so my parents decided to take me to a doctor or a therapist or something. And after my sessions, the doctor came out and basically just told my parents, she's absolutely fine. She's got some things, you know, with math, like she doesn't do well in math, but my goodness, everything else, she's such a positive person. Every single story that she, you know, finished, everything was positive. So I've kind of just always been that way. Like I look for the positive in everything and everyone.
That's so awesome. That's such a great way to experience life. And that's how God wants us to. And I also kind of related to you know, there's our plans and there's God's plans, and his are so much better than ours. But you know, so I don't make plans anymore because I know God's got plans.
God laughs at our plans, right?
Yes, yes.
I laugh at my plans going, oh, I know God's having such a knee slapper up there. He's just like, oh man, Bridgette has no idea what she's doing.
Right. or sometimes we're like, hey God, we can help a little bit. And he doesn't need our help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Well, I shouldn't say I love it because, you know, it's hard, you know, it's hard waiting on God to give us those answers. It's hard waiting on the Lord, but you know, waiting is one of the most precious gifts, words that God can give us, because it says, you know, waiting on the Lord draws us closer to him rather than the outcome. So in that waiting, are we praying in the waiting? You know, and that's what we should be doing. We should be praying in the waiting, trusting in the Lord, and wait on his perfect timing, even though waiting is hard. Waiting is so hard. I mean, we live in a world where now it's like we don't have to wait for anything, right?
Right.
We don't. I mean, we can get any answers, anything at, you know, the snap of our fingers or the tip of our fingers on a computer. But what happened to waiting, and especially what happened to waiting on the Lord? And I think that's hard. And I definitely go through that now. You know, I still am waiting on the Lord, wondering, God, what do you have planned for me? But God's plans are bigger and better than we can ever imagine.
Amen. Well,
Yeah.
Bridgette, thank you so much for your time and sharing your message and your book.
Absolutely.
And give us my audience, just give them a final, maybe a message of closing, you know, maybe, you know, for the person out there that feels that they're overlooked, or maybe someone that's seeking God, but they haven't found him yet, or what would be your message?
I would just say, trust in the Lord. If you have questions, ask questions. Find some good people, godly people that can take you through God's word and answer those questions. That is so important. Maybe your pastor, maybe for, you know, maybe it's a friend. But trust in the Lord. I know that it's hard. I go through it still, and especially with social media, it's hard not to compare, you know, maybe someone to what you're going through. But just know that God has bigger and better plans for you, and your story is different than everybody else's story. God gave you a story specifically. So give God the pen, let him write your story.
Amen. Well, thank you again, Bridgette.
Thanks, Darren.
And thank you for watching Get on the Ark.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. What a joy.
Thanks.